The SUV's headlights cut through the darkness as it swerved toward the man walking along the roadside. Hannah Sullivan pressed herself deeper into the shadows, her phone recording everything. The impact was sickening. The body flew through the air like a rag doll. And then Warren Blake, the most powerful man in Pine Ridge, stepped out of the vehicle to make sure his victim was dead. "Oh my God," Hannah whispered. "Oh my God, oh my God." She had just witnessed a murder, and the murderer was now looking around, scanning the tree line where she was hiding. If you want to know what happens when a mother's love collides with a town's darkest secrets, subscribe to our channel and stay until the very end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We want to see how far this story travels. Now let me take you back to where it all began. For 14 nights straight, Shadow had done the same thing. Margaret Sullivan stood at her kitchen window coffee mug, warming her palms, watching her German Shepherd press his nose against the back door. His ears were forward. His tail was completely still. His entire body was rigid with focus, aimed at the tree line like a compass needle pointing north. "Shadow, come here, boy." Nothing. "Shadow, treat." Not even a twitch of his ear. Maggie set down her mug and walked over to kneel beside him. 8 years she'd had this dog. 8 years of understanding each other without words. Michael had given Shadow to her just 3 months before the cancer diagnosis, as if somehow he'd known she would need this steady, faithful presence when everything else fell apart. "What are you looking at, old friend?" Shadow didn't acknowledge her. His eyes stayed fixed on that distant point where her property ended and county forest began, where the abandoned ranger cabin sat beside a creek bed that hadn't seen water in years. Maggie followed his gaze into the darkness. She saw nothing but trees, heard nothing but the wind picking up the first rumbles of the storm the Weather Service had been warning about all week. But Shadow saw something. Shadow always saw things before she did. Her phone buzzed. Severe thunderstorm warning, possible flash flooding in low-lying areas. "Come on, boy, storm's coming. Let's get you settled." Shadow didn't move. Maggie sighed and returned to the kitchen. The house felt too big these days, too quiet. 3 acres of land that backed up to county forest, inherited from her parents 15 years ago. She'd moved back here after Michael died, seeking the isolation, the silence, the space to grieve without witnesses. But some nights the silence pressed down on her like a physical weight. Some nights she found herself talking to Shadow just to hear a voice in the room, even if it was only her own. Her eyes drifted to the photograph on the mantel. Hannah at 16 laughing at something Michael had said, her dark hair catching the summer light. That was before everything fell apart. Before the argument that had shattered their relationship into pieces neither of them knew how to reassemble. "You're too controlling, Mom. You want everyone to follow your rules, your way of doing things. I'm trying to protect you, Hannah. The world isn't as forgiving as you think." "Maybe I don't need your protection. Maybe I just need you to believe in me for once." 10 years. 10 years since Hannah had walked out that door and never come back. 10 years of silence of birthdays with no calls of holidays spent wondering where her daughter was, if she was happy, if she was safe. The lights flickered. Thunder crashed overhead close enough to rattle the windows. Maggie glanced at Shadow, expecting to see him retreat from the door the way most dogs did during storms. He hadn't moved. If anything, his posture had intensified. The power went out. 30 seconds of darkness, then the emergency generator kicked in, flooding the kitchen with light again. Maggie turned toward Shadow. He was no longer sitting. He was pacing frantically between her and the door, whining in a way she'd never heard before. Low, urgent, almost human in its desperation. Then he stopped, looked directly at her. And in that moment, Maggie was transported back 20 years to a field hospital in Afghanistan where service dogs would alert medics to wounded soldiers hidden in the chaos of combat. It was the same look, the same desperate communication, the same unmistakable message. Now! We have to go now! "Shadow, what is it? What's out there?" He pawed at the door, whined again, turned to look at her with those intelligent brown eyes that had never lied to her not once in 8 years. "You want me to go out there in this what?" Lightning split the sky. Rain began hammering the roof like fists. Shadow barked once, sharp, commanding, then pressed his paw against the glass again. Something was wrong. Something was terribly wrong, and Shadow was the only one who knew what it was. Maggie grabbed her waterproof jacket from the hook by the door, pulled on her rubber boots, retrieved the heavy flashlight from the emergency drawer. "This better be important," she muttered as she reached for the door handle. The moment she cracked it open, Shadow bolted into the storm. Maggie cursed and followed the wind, nearly ripping the door from her grip as she stepped into the downpour. She couldn't see more than 20 feet in any direction. Rain pelted her face, her eyes making it almost impossible to track Shadow's dark shape as he raced toward the tree line. The mud sucked at her boots with every step. Twice she nearly fell. but she kept going. Because Shadow had never been wrong. Not when he'd sensed Michael's declining health before the doctors confirmed it. Not when he'd alerted her to the gas leak last winter. Not once in 8 years. The tree line swallowed her. Branches whipped at her face, her arms. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness like a surgeon's scalpel, revealing only more rain, more trees, more mud. Shadow, Shadow, wait. She heard him bark somewhere ahead. Once. Twice. Insistent. The abandoned ranger cabin materialized out of the storm like a ghost, built in the 1940s as a forestry outpost decommissioned 20 years ago. Maggie had explored it once shortly after moving back to her childhood home, found nothing but mouse droppings and broken furniture. Shadow was circling the building, frantically pausing at a side window, then racing back to the front door, then circling again. Maggie reached the door, breathing hard. The padlock was rusted, but she could see fresh scrapes in the metal. Someone had opened this recently. Shadow? What's in there? What did you find? He sat directly in front of the door and looked up at her. His body was trembling, whether from cold or urgency, she couldn't tell. Maggie grabbed the padlock and pulled. The weakened hasp gave way with a screech of rusted metal. The smell hit her first. Musty wood, rodent nests. But underneath that, something else. Something human. The particular scent of fierce sweat that she recognized from 2 decades of military medicine. She raised her flashlight and swept the beam across the room. Footprints in the dust. Small ones. A child's footprints. Shadow pushed past her and moved straight to what had once been a pantry. He stopped at a particular spot, scratched once at the floorboards, then looked back at her. Maggie knelt beside him, ran her hand across the wooden floor. Felt one board shift under her touch. Her heart was pounding now. 20 years of medical training told her to be prepared for anything. 20 years of being a mother told her something was about to change her life forever. She worked her fingers into the gap, lifted the board, a crawl space. Dark. Seemingly empty. Then her flashlight caught movement. A small face, wide, frightened eyes blinking in the sudden light. A metal lunchbox clutched to a thin chest like a shield. A child. A little girl, no more than 6 years old, huddled in the space beneath the floor. For 3 heartbeats, neither of them moved. "Hello there," Maggie said softly, falling back on the gentle voice she'd developed over years of treating terrified soldiers. "I'm Maggie. That's my dog Shadow. He's the one who found you." The girl's eyes darted between Maggie and Shadow. Her lips were slightly blue. Her dark hair was matted against her forehead. She'd been down here for days, Maggie realized. Days. "Are you hurt, sweetheart?" The girl shook her head. "It's storming pretty bad out there. Would you like to come to my house where it's warm and dry?" The girl hesitated, then whispered words that would haunt Maggie for the rest of her life. "Mama said wait for the dog." Maggie's breath caught. "Your mama told you to wait for a dog. A big dog with the lady. She showed me your picture." The girl pointed at Shadow. "Like him?" "My picture. Your mama showed you my picture." The girl nodded solemnly, then asked a question that made Maggie's world tilt on its axis. "Are you Grandma Maggie?" "Grandma," the word echoed in the small cabin. Grandma. She had no grandchildren, no contact with her only daughter in 10 years. No way this child could know her name unless... "Sweetheart," Maggie said carefully, "what's your name?" "Lily." "And what's your mama's name?" "Lily." Instead of answering, Lily turned the lunchbox in her small hands and pointed to a photograph taped to the lid. The image was creased, water-spotted, but unmistakable. Hannah, older than when Maggie had last seen her. New lines around her eyes, shorter hair, but undeniably, impossibly Hannah. Maggie's hands were shaking as she reached toward the photograph. 10 years. 10 years of silence, of wondering, of regret. And now this. A granddaughter she never knew existed, hidden in a crawlspace, waiting for a dog to find her. "Can you come out of there, Lily? It's not safe during a storm." Lily reached up with thin arms. Maggie helped her climb out, noting how light she was, how her clothes hung loose on her small frame. This child had been rationing food, had been down there alone for days. "How long have you been here, Lily?" 3 sleeps. 3 days. This child had been hiding in darkness for 3 days. "Your mama," Maggie said carefully. "Where is she now?" Lily's lower lip trembled. "She said she had to make sure the bad people couldn't find us. She said she had to be brave." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Like you taught her to be." "Like you taught her to be?" Maggie felt tears threatening. Hannah remembered. Despite everything, despite 10 years of silence and anger and hurt, Hannah remembered. "Come on, sweetheart, let's get you warm." She wrapped her rain jacket around Lily's small shoulders and lifted her. The walk back to the house was slow, treacherous. Maggie held Lily close against her chest while Shadow led the way through the storm, pausing every few steps to look back and make sure they were following. Inside, Maggie's training took over. Warm blankets on the couch. Heated milk for Coco. Simple food crackers with peanut butter that wouldn't shock a malnourished stomach. While Lily ate, Maggie examined the lunchbox. Besides Hannah's photograph, there was a folded note tucked inside a plastic bag. Her hands trembled as she opened it. "Mom? If you're reading this, something has gone wrong. Keep Lily safe. The cabin is where they won't look first. I'll come when I can. If I don't, she's yours to protect now. I know I said terrible things. I know I walked away and never looked back. But I never stopped loving you, and I never stopped believing that when it really mattered, you would be there. You always protected everyone else. Now protect her. I'm sorry for everything." Hannah. Maggie read the note 3 times. The handwriting was Hannah's. The familiar loops of her letters, the way she crossed her T's high. This was real. Her daughter had sent her granddaughter to her, had trusted her despite a decade of silence. But what had Hannah gotten into? What danger was so severe she had to hide her own child? "Lily, when did you last see your mama?" The girl looked up from her cocoa. 3 nights ago. She tucked me in at our apartment. Then she woke me up really late. She was crying." "Crying?" "She said we had to go somewhere safe, but she had to do something first. Something important." "Did she tell you what?" Lily shook her head. "She said she had to make sure the bad people couldn't hurt us anymore. She said she had proof of something terrible." "Proof of something terrible?" "What kind of proof, sweetheart, did she tell you?" "She said a very important man did a very bad thing. She said she saw it happen, and she filmed it on her phone." Maggie's blood ran cold. Hannah had witnessed something, filmed it, and now she was missing. "Do you know who the important man was?" Lily shook her head again. "Mama said not to say his name. She said his name was dangerous." The storm continued to rage outside. Lightning illuminated the windows every few seconds. And somewhere out there, Hannah was either running or hiding or... Maggie couldn't let herself finish that thought. "Lily, did your mama tell you anything else? Anything about where she was going or who she was meeting?" "She said..." Lily scrunched up her face, trying to remember. "She said if the lady with the star couldn't help her, no one could." "The lady with the star? A police lady. Mama showed me her picture. She said if anything happened, find the lady with the star on her collar. She said that lady was good, but some other police people were bad. Some police were bad. Hannah had known which officers she could trust, which meant she had known which ones she couldn't. This wasn't just a crime. This was corruption, and Hannah had walked right into the middle of it. Maggie reached for her phone. Her first instinct was to call 911, but Lily's words stopped her. Some police people were bad. If Hannah had been specific about which officers to trust, it was because she knew the others couldn't be trusted. "Lily, the lady with the star. Do you remember what she looked like?" "She had dark hair, young, nice eyes." Lily thought for a moment. "Mama said she was the only good one at the whole police station." Maggie made a decision. She dialed the non-emergency number for the sheriff's department. Pine Ridge Sheriff's Department. "This is Margaret Sullivan. I need to report a missing person, and I found a child who needs assistance, my granddaughter." 40 minutes later, a county social worker and a deputy arrived at Maggie's door. The deputy was a young woman with dark hair and watchful eyes. On her collar, a small silver star pin glinted in the light. The lady with the star. "Mrs. Sullivan, I'm Deputy Rachel Torres. This is Mrs. Patterson from County Services. You reported finding a child." Maggie stepped aside to let them in. Torres's eyes immediately went to Lily, curled up on the couch with Shadow pressed against her side. "Her name is Lily. She's my granddaughter." "Your granddaughter?" Mrs. Patterson's tone was sharp, with suspicion. "Our records don't show you having any grandchildren, Mrs. Sullivan." "I didn't know she existed until tonight. My daughter and I have been estranged for 10 years. Torres knelt beside the couch, bringing herself to Lily's eye level. "Hi there, Lily. I'm Rachel. That's a beautiful dog you have." Lily looked at Torres for a long moment, then her eyes fixed on the star pin. "You're the lady," Lily whispered. "Mama showed me your picture." Torres went very still. "Your mama showed you my picture. She said if anything bad happened, find you. She said you're the only good one." The silence in the room was absolute. Mrs. Patterson looked confused. Torres looked like she'd been punched in the stomach. Mrs. Sullivan, Torres said slowly, I need you to tell me exactly how you found this child. Everything, from the beginning, Maggie told her. The 14 nights of shadow staring at the tree line, the storm, finding Lily in the crawl space with her photograph and note, everything Hannah had told her daughter about bad people and proof and an important man who had done something terrible. When she finished, Torres was pale. Mrs. Sullivan, I need to show you something, but first... She glanced at Mrs. Patterson. I think it's best if Lily stays here tonight. Kinship placement. I'll vouch for Mrs. Sullivan's suitability. Deputy Torres protocol requires. Protocol can wait until morning. Torres's voice was steel. This child has been through enough. She's staying with her grandmother. Something in her tone made Patterson back down. After securing Maggie's contact information and setting a morning follow-up visit, the social worker left. Torres waited until her car pulled away before speaking again. Mrs. Sullivan, I've been investigating irregularities in this department for 6 months, quietly. I think your daughter stumbled onto the same thing I've been looking at. What kind of irregularities? 3 days ago, an environmental consultant named Daniel Reyes was killed in a hit-and-run on Millbrook Bend. He was working on a watershed impact study for Warren Blake's new development project. Warren Blake, the most powerful man in Pine Ridge. His money funded everything from youth sports to the sheriff's re-election campaigns. You think Blake was involved in the hit-and-run? I think the timing is suspicious. Your daughter disappears the same night as Reyes dies. And Lily says Hannah had proof of something terrible, something involving an important man. Maggie's stomach dropped. You think Hannah witnessed the hit-and-run? I think it's possible, and if she filmed it, then she's in more danger than you can imagine. We have to find her. That's exactly what we're going to do. But Mrs. Sullivan, you need to understand something. If Blake is involved and if Sheriff Garrett is protecting him, the way I suspect, then I can't trust anyone in this department except you. Torres nodded grimly. Your daughter was right. I'm the only good one. That night, after Torres left and Lily was finally asleep in the guest room with Shadow standing guard, Maggie sat alone in her kitchen trying to process everything. Her daughter was alive, had been alive at least 3 days ago, had a child Maggie knew nothing about, had witnessed something terrible and now was missing, possibly dead, because she'd tried to do the right thing, and Maggie, who had spent 20 years protecting soldiers in war zones, hadn't been able to protect her own child. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered it cautiously. Hello. The voice on the other end was male, distorted, unrecognizable. Mrs. Sullivan, the girl knows too much. Send her away or what's buried in that creek bed won't be alone for long. The line went dead. Maggie sat frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. What's buried in that creek bed? They had killed someone, hidden the body near the cabin where Hannah had hidden Lily. And now they were threatening to do the same to her granddaughter. She dialed Torres immediately. Someone just called me. They threatened Lily. They said... Her voice broke. They said what's buried in the creek bed won't be alone for long. Torres was silent for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was tight with controlled fury. That implies they've already buried someone, possibly your daughter. I'm sending a patrol car to your location now. Don't open the door for anyone except uniformed officers. I'll be there in 20 minutes. As Maggie waited for Torres to arrive, she checked every door and window. Shadow followed her through the house, his alertness a mirror of her own fear. When she reached the guest room, she paused to look at Lily sleeping peacefully, one small hand resting on Shadow's fur. This child, this precious child, had hidden alone in darkness for 3 days, waiting for a dog she'd never met to lead a grandmother she'd never known to save her. Hannah had trusted Maggie with the most precious thing in her life. Had believed, despite everything, that when it mattered most, her mother would be there. Maggie Sullivan had failed her daughter once, 10 years ago, with words spoken in anger that could never be taken back. She would not fail her again. Whatever it took, however dangerous it became, she would protect this child and find out what happened to Hannah. She returned to the living room window and watched the storm finally beginning to break. Through the thinning rain, she could just see the tree line where Shadow had kept his vigil for 14 nights. He had known. Somehow, impossibly, he had known that someone out there needed to be found. And now that Lily was safe, there was still one more person waiting to be discovered. Hannah was out there somewhere. Dead or alive, she was waiting for her mother to find her. And Maggie Sullivan was not going to stop looking until she did. Torres arrived exactly 18 minutes after Maggie's call. She wasn't alone. A patrol car sat at the end of the driveway, its lights off, but engine running. That's Deputy Williams, Torres said as she stepped inside. He's one of the few I trust. He'll watch the house tonight. How many can you trust? 3, maybe 4, out of 22 deputies. Torres's jaw tightened. This department is rotten, Mrs. Sullivan. I've known it for months. I just couldn't prove it. Maggie led her to the kitchen table where she'd laid out Hannah's note and the photograph from Lily's lunchbox. Torres studied both carefully, her expression growing darker with each passing second. This handwriting, you're certain it's your daughter's I'd know it anywhere. She always crossed her T's high just like that, and the way she writes her L's, those loops, that's Hannah. Torres nodded slowly. The caller. Tell me exactly what he said. Word for word. He said the girl knows too much. Send her away, or what's buried in that creek bed won't be alone for long. The creek bed, that runs right past the cabin where you found Lily. Yes, and it connects to Millbrook Bend, doesn't it, where the hit and run happened? Torres looked up sharply. How do you know about Millbrook Bend? You mentioned it earlier, the environmental consultant Daniel Reyes. Right. Torres rubbed her temples. Mrs. Sullivan, I need to tell you something I haven't told anyone else. What is it? 3 days ago, the same night your daughter disappeared, I received an anonymous tip. Someone claimed to have video evidence of the hit and run, evidence that would prove it wasn't an accident. Maggie's heart began pounding. Video evidence. The tipster said they'd send it to me within 24 hours, but the message never came. The source went dark. Torres paused. I think your daughter was that source. Hannah was going to send you the video, and someone found out before she could. The implications hung heavy in the air. Hannah had witnessed a murder, had recorded it, had tried to get the evidence to the one trustworthy cop in Pine Ridge, and someone had stopped her. The caller, Maggie said. He mentioned what's buried in the creek bed. That means there's a body out there. Possibly Daniel Reyes, whose death was ruled a hit and run. Possibly... Torres couldn't finish the sentence. Possibly my daughter. The words came out flat, clinical. Maggie had learned long ago to compartmentalize in crisis situations. Feel later, act now. We need to search that creek bed, she said. We need more than that. We need the video evidence. Without it, Blake walks free, even if we find bodies. Lily said Hannah hid copies of the evidence, multiple copies in places they wouldn't think to look. Smart, Torres nodded appreciatively. Your daughter was smart. She learned that from her father. Michael always said, never put all your eggs in one basket. Torres pulled out her phone. I have a contact at the state police. Detective Sandoval. He's been investigating corruption in rural departments across Montana. He'll want to see this. Can we trust him? He's the reason I'm still investigating instead of looking the other way like everyone else. He's been my lifeline for 6 months. Torres began typing a message. I'm telling him we have a potential witness evidence of a cover-up and a missing woman who may have had video proof of murder. How soon can he get here? He's based in Helena, 4 hours, maybe 5. Torres sent the message. In the meantime, we need to find where your daughter hid that evidence. A small voice came from the hallway. I know where. Both women turned. Lily stood in the doorway, shadow pressed against her side. Her eyes were puffy from sleep, but her voice was steady. Lily? Maggie moved toward her. You should be sleeping, sweetheart. I heard you talking about Mama, about the video. Lily clutched Shadow's fur. I know where she hid things. She showed me. Torres knelt to Lily's level. Can you tell us, Lily? It's very important. Mama said there were 3 hiding places. The cabin was the first one. That's where she put me. Lily's voice wavered slightly. She said the second one was at the place where Grandma Maggie used to measure her. Maggie felt her breath catch. The height marks, on the doorframe at the cabin. You measured her height there. Every summer, when she was little, we'd pretend we were explorers and I'd mark how much she'd grown. Maggie's throat tightened. She remembered. There's more hidden at the cabin, Torres said. We need to go back. It's 2 a.m. The storm just passed. The ground will be treacherous. Then we go at first light, 4 hours from now. Torres stood. Lily, you said there were 3 hiding places. What's the third one? Lily shook her head. Mama didn't tell me. She said if the bad people caught her, they couldn't make her tell what she didn't know. She said Grandma Maggie would figure it out. Figure it out how? Mama said Grandma Maggie knew all her secrets, even the ones she thought she'd hidden. Maggie stared at her granddaughter. Hannah had left her a puzzle, a trail of breadcrumbs leading to evidence that could bring down the most powerful man in Pine Ridge. and she'd trusted Maggie to solve it. "I don't understand," Maggie said. "We barely spoke for 10 years. What secrets could she mean?" "Think, Mrs. Sullivan. Somewhere your daughter felt safe. Somewhere she associated with you. Somewhere she would have hidden something precious." Maggie closed her eyes, reaching back through decades of memories. Hannah as a toddler hiding her favorite toys under Maggie's pillow. Hannah at 7 burying a time capsule in the backyard. Hannah at 12 keeping a diary hidden in... "The oak tree," Maggie whispered. "What?" "In the backyard. There's an old oak tree with a hollow in the trunk. Hannah used to hide her diary there when she was young. She thought I didn't know, but I found it once by accident. I never told her." "You think she hid evidence in a tree?" "She said I knew all her secrets, even the ones she thought she'd hidden." Maggie opened her eyes. She remembered that tree. She knew I'd remember too. Torres grabbed her flashlight. "Show me." They went out the back door, Maggie leading the way across the wet grass to the massive oak that had stood on this property for 100 years. The hollow was about 5 feet up, barely visible in the darkness. Maggie reached inside. Her fingers touched something smooth and rectangular. A phone, sealed in a plastic bag. "Oh God," she breathed. Torres took the bag, carefully examining the phone through the plastic. "It's an older model. Probably a burner. Your daughter was careful. Can we access it?" "Not without potentially triggering something. We should wait for Sandoval. He'll have forensic equipment. I can't wait 4 hours. My daughter might be dying somewhere while we..." "Mrs. Sullivan," Torres gripped her arm. "I know this is hard, but if we compromise this evidence, Blake's lawyers will have it thrown out. Your daughter risked everything to gather this. We can't waste it." Maggie stared at the phone in its plastic bag. Hannah's voice was on that device. Hannah's proof. Possibly Hannah's last words. 4 hours, she said finally. Then we see what's on that phone. They went back inside. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, shadow curled protectively around her. The sight made Maggie's chest ache. "She's remarkable," Torres said quietly. 3 days alone in that crawlspace, most adults would have broken. "She's her mother's daughter. And her grandmother's granddaughter." The hours crawled by. Torres made coffee while Maggie sat vigil by the window, watching the darkness slowly give way to gray dawn. Shadow stayed with Lily, only leaving her side once to press his nose against Maggie's hand before returning to his post. At 6:15, a dark sedan pulled into the driveway. Torres' tensed hand moving to her weapon, then relaxed. Sandoval. He made good time. Detective Marcus Sandoval was a compact man in his 50s, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that had seen too much. He shook Maggie's hand firmly. "Mrs. Sullivan, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Can you help find my daughter?" "I can try." He turned to Torres. "Show me what you have." They spread everything on the kitchen table. Hannah's note, the photograph, the phone from the oak tree, Torres' own files on departmental irregularities. Sandoval studied each item carefully, his expression growing grimmer by the minute. "Blake development has been on my radar for 2 years, he said finally. "Every project they touch, someone ends up dead or disappeared. Always ruled accidental, always impossible to prove otherwise." "Because Garrett covers it up," Torres added. "Garrett and half the county apparatus, judges, commissioners, building inspectors." Sandoval picked up the sealed phone. "If this contains what I think it contains, it's the first real evidence we've ever had against Blake directly." "Then let's open it." Sandoval pulled on latex gloves and carefully extracted the phone from the plastic bag. He connected it to a portable device that looked like a small tablet. "This will mirror the contents without altering any metadata. Whatever's on here, we'll see it exactly as your daughter left it." The phone powered on. Lock screen. 4-digit passcode required. "Try her birthday," Maggie suggested. Torres shook her head. "Too obvious. She was being careful." "Lily's birthday, then." "Do you know it?" Maggie didn't. 10 years of estrangement meant she didn't even know when her own granddaughter was born. "Wait." She moved to the couch and gently woke Lily. "Sweetheart, I need to ask you something. When is your birthday?" "March 15th, Lily murmured sleepily. "What year were you born?" 2018. Maggie returned to the table. "Try 0315. Sandoval entered the numbers. The phone unlocked. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Sandoval began scrolling through the contents. 3 video files, 1 audio recording, multiple photographs, and... He paused. A text document titled, "If Something Happens to Me." "Play the videos," Maggie said. Her voice didn't sound like her own, The first video was dark grainy, clearly shot from behind some kind of cover. Headlights approaching on a rural road. An SUV? A man walking along the roadside carrying what looked like sample containers. Then the SUV swerved. The impact was sickening even on the small screen. The body flew through the air. The SUV's brake lights flared. "My God," Torres whispered. The SUV stopped. Backed up slowly. The driver's door opened. Warren Blake stepped out. Walked to where the body had landed. Looked down for a long moment. Then pulled out his phone and made a call. Hannah's voice came through the recording, barely audible over the wind. Oh my God, he's calling someone. He's not calling for help, he's calling." 20 minutes of footage. Blake waiting by the body, another vehicle arriving, Sheriff Thomas Garrett's personal pickup truck. Together, Blake and Garrett loaded the body into Blake's SUV. Garrett got back in his truck. Both vehicles drove away. The video ended. Sandoval's face was ashen. She got everything. License plates, faces, the whole cover-up. "That's why they're after her," Torres said. "That's why they threatened Lily. They know this video exists." "Play the next one," Maggie said. She needed to see it all. The second video showed Blake and Garrett outside the county administration building at night, loading boxes into Blake's trunk. The timestamp was the day after the hit and run. "Evidence tampering," Sandoval muttered. "They're removing files, probably anything connecting Blake to Reyes." The third video was different. This one showed Hannah herself. Maggie's daughter looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, hair unwashed, but her voice was steady as she spoke directly into the camera. "Mom, if you're watching this, something happened and I couldn't get back to Lily." Maggie felt tears streaming down her face but couldn't look away. "I saw Warren Blake kill a man. I saw Sheriff Garrett help him cover it up. I recorded everything. I hid copies of the evidence in places they won't think to look." Hannah paused, wiping her eyes. "I know I said terrible things when I left. I was angry and stupid and I thought I knew everything, but I never stopped thinking about you, about the things you taught me. You always said standing up for what's right isn't about being brave. It's about not being able to live with yourself if you don't." Her voice cracked. "I can't live with myself if I let them get away with this, but I also can't let them hurt Lily, so I'm sending her to you, the one person I know will protect her no matter what." Hannah reached toward the camera as if trying to touch someone who wasn't there. "Tell Lily I love her every day. Tell her stories about me, even the embarrassing ones. And Mom?" Hannah's face crumpled. "I'm sorry for everything. I love you. I always did." The video ended. Maggie stood, frozen tears falling silently. 10 years of silence, 10 years of regret, and now her daughter's voice reaching out from 3 days ago, saying everything they should have said a decade earlier. "Mrs. Sullivan." Sandoval's voice was gentle. "There's a text document. You should read it." The document was titled, "If Something Happens to Me." It was a timeline. 5 years of suspicious deaths in Pine Ridge County. A commissioner who opposed Blake's first major development dead in a single-car accident. A journalist investigating Blake's business practices' apparent suicide. A former Blake employee who threatened to go public overdose. And Daniel Reyes, environmental consultant. Hit and run, case closed within 48 hours. She wasn't just documenting one murder, Torres said slowly. She was building a case against an entire criminal enterprise. "That's why they had to stop her," Sandoval agreed. "She had enough to bring down Blake Garrett and half the county government." "Where is she?" Maggie asked. Her voice was raw. "Where's my daughter?" Sandoval and Torres exchanged glances. "The caller mentioned the creek bed," Torres said carefully. "We need to search it." He said what's buried there won't be alone for long. That implies someone is already buried." "It could be Reyes. His body was never properly recovered. The official report says he was found by the roadside, but that's not where they left him," Maggie finished. "They moved him, like they moved the evidence." "We need a search team," Sandoval said. "I can have state investigators here by noon. Cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar. Noon is too late. If Hannah is out there, if she's injured somewhere. Mrs. Sullivan, I understand your urgency, but we're talking about a crime scene that could put away some of the most powerful people in Montana. We can't compromise it. I was an Army medic for 20 years. I've processed crime scenes in war zones. I know how to preserve evidence." Sandoval studied her for a long moment. "Torres told me about your background. She also told me your dog found the child when no one else could." Shadow knew she was there. 14 nights he stared at that tree line before I finally listened to him. Then maybe he can help us again. Sandoval stood. We'll go to the cabin first. Check for additional evidence. If your dog alerts to anything along the way. He will. If there's something to find, Shadow will find it. They left Lily sleeping on the couch with Deputy Williams standing guard. Torres drove with Sandoval in the passenger seat and Maggie in the back with Shadow. The drive to the abandoned ranger cabin took 20 minutes on roads still slick from the storm. The cabin looked different in daylight. Smaller, more decrepit. But Maggie's eyes went immediately to the doorframe where she'd measured Hannah's height every summer of her childhood. The marks are still there, she whispered. Torres examined the doorframe carefully. There's something behind this board. It's been loosened. Together they pried off the strip of wood. Behind it was another sealed plastic bag. This one contained a USB drive. Backup copies, Sandoval said. Your daughter made multiple copies of everything. She was thorough. She was scared, and she was smart. Sandoval bagged the USB drive. Let's check the rest of the cabin. Shadow had been sniffing around the perimeter, his nose working constantly. Suddenly he froze. His ears pricked forward. His body went rigid. He's alerting, Maggie said. Something's nearby. Shadow moved toward the creek bed, his pace deliberate and purposeful. Maggie followed her heart pounding. Torres and Sandoval fell in behind her. The creek had water in it now, muddy runoff from the storm. Shadow walked along the bank for about 50 yards, then stopped. He sat down and looked at Maggie with those intelligent eyes. Here, she said. He's saying it's here. Sandoval knelt by the water's edge. The soil was disturbed. Rocks had been piled unnaturally. Someone had tried to hide something, and the storm had partially exposed their work. I need to call my team, he said quietly. This is a potential gravesite. Dig? Maggie's voice was flat. I need to know. Mrs. Sullivan? I identified bodies for 20 years. Soldiers blown apart by IEDs. Children caught in crossfire. I can handle whatever's under there. Sandoval hesitated, then nodded. He pulled on fresh gloves and began carefully removing rocks. It didn't take long. The first thing they found was fabric. A scrap of cloth, dark blue, partially decomposed. Then a hand. Maggie felt the world tilt. She knew that hand. Had held it when Hannah was a baby. Had bandaged its scrapes when Hannah fell off her bike. Had watched it wave goodbye 10 years ago as Hannah walked out the door. Stop, she heard herself say. That's my daughter's ring. The silver band on the exposed finger caught the morning light. A small Celtic knot design. Michael had given it to Hannah on her 16th birthday, just months before he died. Torres put a hand on Maggie's arm. Mrs. Sullivan, you shouldn't be here for this. I'm not leaving her. Not again. The excavation continued. Sandoval worked with painstaking care, documenting everything, preserving every detail. Behind them, Shadow sat motionless, his vigil finally reaching its end. Hannah's body emerged slowly from the earth. She had been wrapped in plastic weighted with rocks dumped in the creek bed like garbage. But her face, when Sandoval finally uncovered it, was almost peaceful. Maggie knelt beside her daughter, reached out with a trembling hand, touched Hannah's cold cheek. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry I didn't listen. I'm sorry I let you walk away. I'm sorry it took me 10 years to find you. The tears came then, not the controlled tears of earlier, but deep racking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere primal. 20 years of military discipline crumbled in an instant. She was just a mother kneeling in the mud, mourning the child she had failed. Torres stepped back, giving her space. Sandoval continued his documentation, but his movements were gentler now, respectful of the grief unfolding before him. Shadow approached slowly, pressed his nose against Maggie's hand, then lay down beside Hannah's body as if standing guard over her one final time. The coroner will need to examine her, Tom, Sandoval said finally. But based on what I'm seeing, blunt force trauma, likely vehicular impact. She was hit by a car, Mrs. Sullivan, the same way Reyes was. They ran her down. That's my assessment, yes. Maggie stood slowly. Her legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Find them. Find everyone responsible, and make them pay. We have the video evidence. We have the timeline. We have 2 bodies connected to Warren Blake. Sandoval's voice was hard. He's not walking away from this. Neither is Garrett. What about the deputy, the one Lily mentioned, the one who follows people? Kevin Marsh, Torres said. Garrett's cousin. He's been handling surveillance and intimidation for years. If anyone followed your daughter the night she died, then he's as guilty as Blake. We'll get him too, I promise you." Maggie looked down at Hannah one last time. Her daughter had died trying to do the right thing, had died because she refused to look away from injustice, had died like the brave, stubborn woman Maggie had raised her to be. "She came back," Maggie said quietly. "After 10 years, she came back to Pine Ridge." The job offer, Torres remembered. She was hired by the county environmental office, the same office that commissioned Reyes's study. She came back on purpose. She knew something was wrong. She came back to investigate. And when she witnessed the murder, she couldn't walk away because you raised her not to. Maggie closed her eyes. The terrible irony of it. The values she'd instilled in Hannah, the same ones that had driven them apart when Hannah accused her of being too controlling, had ultimately gotten her daughter killed. Because Hannah couldn't look away. Because Hannah had to do the right thing no matter the cost, just like her mother. "I need to tell Lily," Maggie said. "You should wait until—" "No, she deserves to know. She's been waiting 3 days for her mother. She needs to know the truth." The drive back to the house was silent. Maggie sat in the back seat staring at nothing, trying to find words that didn't exist. How do you tell a 6-year-old that her mother is never coming home? How do you explain that the world has monsters in it, and sometimes the monsters win Shadow pressed against her side the entire way? His warmth was the only thing keeping her anchored to reality. When they arrived, Lily was awake eating cereal at the kitchen table under Deputy Williams's watchful eye. She looked up as Maggie entered. "Did you find Mama?" Maggie knelt beside her granddaughter's chair, took those small hands in her own. "Lily, sweetheart, I need to tell you something very sad." Lily's eyes searched Maggie's face. She was only 6, but she understood more than any child should have to. "Mama's not coming back, is she?" It wasn't a question. "No, baby, she's not. The bad people hurt her very badly. She died." Lily's face crumpled. "But she said she'd come back. She promised." "I know she did, and she wanted to keep that promise more than anything, but sometimes bad things happen to good people even when they're trying their hardest." "Is she in heaven now, with Grandpa Michael?" Maggie pulled Lily into her arms. "Yes, sweetheart, she's with Grandpa Michael, and she's watching over you. She'll always be watching over you." Lily sobbed against Maggie's shoulder, deep, heartbroken sounds that seemed too big for such a small body. Maggie held her and let her own tears fall, 2 generations united in grief for the woman they had both loved and lost. "I want Mama," Lily wailed. "I want my Mama. I know, baby, I know." Shadow approached and pressed himself against both of them, his body warm and solid. Lily reached out blindly and clutched his fur. "Shadow found me," Lily whispered between sobs. "Mama said he would. She said he was magic. He is magic. He's the best dog in the world." "Will you stay with me, Grandma, forever?" Maggie pulled back just enough to look into Lily's tear-streaked face. "Forever and ever. I promise. I'm never going to leave you." "Do you promise, like really promise?" "I promise, like really promise." Lily threw her arms around Maggie's neck and held on like she would never let go. In the background, Maggie heard Torres on the phone coordinating the recovery of Hannah's body, arranging for state forensics teams beginning the process that would eventually bring Warren Blake to justice. But in that moment, none of it mattered. All that mattered was the small, grieving child in her arms. The child Hannah had trusted her to protect. The child she would spend the rest of her life loving and raising and keeping safe. Hannah was gone. But her daughter was here. And Maggie would not fail this time. She would not fail again. The next 48 hours moved like a fever dream. Maggie barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Hannah's face emerging from the mud, the Celtic ring catching the light, the peaceful expression that seemed so wrong given how violently she had died. Lily stayed close, physically attached to either Maggie or Shadow at all times, as if afraid that letting go would mean losing someone else. She didn't cry much after that first terrible outpouring. Instead, she went quiet, watchful, the way children become when the world has shown them its cruelty too early. On the second morning, Sandoval called with news that made Maggie grip the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. "We found Daniel Reyes, half a mile downstream from your daughter. Same disposal method, wrapped in plastic, weighted with rocks." How long had he been there? Coroner estimates 3 days longer than Hannah. The timeline fits. Blake killed Reyes, your daughter witnessed it, and 3 days later they killed her too. What happens now? Arrest warrants are being prepared as we speak. Blake, Garrett, Deputy Marsh, we're coordinating with federal authorities because of the corruption angle. Sandoval paused. Mrs. Sullivan, I need to warn you. When we move on, Blake, things are going to get chaotic. He has money power connections. His lawyers will try everything to discredit the evidence. The videos are clear, his face is visible, and his legal team will argue chain of custody claim the videos were doctored, accuse your daughter of having ulterior motives. They'll drag Hannah's name through the mud if they think it will help their client. Maggie felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. Let them try. I'm telling you this because you need to be prepared. The next few weeks will be brutal, not just legally, publicly. Blake owns half the media in this region. I spent 20 years in war zones, detective. I've been shot at, bombed, watched friends die in my arms. Warren Blake doesn't scare me. Good, because we're going to need you to testify. You and Lily both, eventually. Lily is 6 years old. I know, and I'll fight to keep her off the stand if I can, but if she's the only witness to certain things her mother told her, she's been through enough. I agree, but this case is bigger than one family's tragedy, Mrs. Sullivan. Your daughter documented 5 years of murders. If we can prove even half of what she compiled, we're talking about one of the largest corruption cases in Montana history. Maggie looked across the room at Lily, who was drawing pictures with Shadow lying beside her. The girl had been drawing the same thing for 2 days now. A woman with dark hair surrounded by stars. Do what you have to do, Maggie said. Just give her time to heal first. I'll do my best. The arrests came at dawn on the third day. Torres called at 5:15 in the morning, her voice tight with controlled excitement. It's happening. State police are moving on Blake's residence now. FBI is taking Garrett at his home. Marsh is being picked up at his apartment. Should I be worried about retaliation? We've got units posted at your house. Williams and 2 others I trust completely. But Mrs. Sullivan, stay inside today. Don't answer the door or anyone except law enforcement you recognize. And keep your phone charged. You think they might try something? I think desperate men do desperate things. Blake has spent 30 years building his empire. He's not going to watch it crumble without a fight. Maggie ended the call and went to check on Lily, who was still sleeping. Shadow lifted his head as she entered the guest room, tail thumping softly against the floor. Good boy, she whispered. Keep watching her. Shadow laid his head back down, eyes remaining open. He would watch. He always watched. The morning news exploded with coverage of the arrests. Maggie kept the television on low volume, not wanting Lily to see but unable to look away herself. Warren Blake's mansion surrounded by police vehicles. The developer being led out in handcuffs, his face a mask of disbelieving rage. His wife Christine standing in the doorway, crying. Sheriff Thomas Garrett, still in his pajamas, being read his rights in his own driveway while neighbors watched in stunned silence. Deputy Kevin Marsh trying to run out his back door and being tackled by federal agents. The anchors were breathless with the magnitude of the story. Prominent developer arrested. County sheriff taken into custody. Multiple murder charges. Corruption spanning decades. And at the center of it all, mentioned but not yet identified by name, a woman who had witnessed a murder and died trying to expose the truth. Maggie turned off the television when Lily came padding down the hallway, still in her pajamas, Shadow at her heels. Good morning, sweetheart. Are you hungry? Lily nodded but didn't speak. She'd barely said a dozen words since learning about Hannah. As Maggie made breakfast, her phone rang. Unknown number. She hesitated, remembering the threatening call 3 nights ago, then answered anyway. Mrs. Sullivan? The voice was female this time, trembling. This is Christine Blake, Warren's wife. Maggie's grip tightened on the phone. How did you get this number? Please don't hang up. I know what my husband did. I know about the video. I know about your daughter. Then you know why I have nothing to say to you. I have information, things Warren told me, things that could help your case. Tell the police. I'm going to, but I wanted to talk to you first, mother to mother. Christine's voice cracked. I have children too, Mrs. Sullivan, 3 of them, and I've just learned that their father is a monster. Maggie was silent for a long moment. What kind of information? Warren keeps records, hidden records, in a safe at our cabin in the mountains. The police don't know about that property. It's not in his name. Why are you telling me this? Because I can't live with what he's done. The consultant, your daughter, others, so many others over the years. Christine was crying now. He told me they were accidents, business problems that resolved themselves. I believed him because I wanted to believe him, but I always knew. Deep down, I always knew. And you said nothing. I was afraid. Of him. of what he might do to me, to our children, if I spoke up. A sob broke through. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just trying to do the right thing before it's too late. Maggie thought of Hannah, of how she had refused to look away, refused to stay silent, even when it cost her everything. Give me the address of the cabin. Christine gave it, then added, there's something else, the night your daughter died. Kevin Marsh called Warren from her location. I heard part of the conversation. What did you hear? Warren told him to make it look like an accident, like she lost control of her car, but she fought back. She ran. They had to. Christine couldn't continue. They had to chase her down. I'm so sorry. I'm so terribly sorry. Maggie ended the call. Her hands were shaking, not with grief this time, with rage. Hannah had run, had tried to escape. They had hunted her like an animal and killed her anyway. She called Torres immediately. I just heard from Christine Blake. She wants to cooperate. We know. She's already called Sandoval. We're sending someone to pick her up. She mentioned a cabin, hidden property with records. She told us. We're getting a warrant now. Torres paused. Mrs. Sullivan, this is good. Christine's testimony will corroborate everything. Blake's lawyers can't claim the videos were fabricated if his own wife confirms what happened. She said Hannah fought back. She said they had to chase her. Torres was quiet for a moment. The coroner's report confirms defensive wounds. Your daughter didn't go quietly. She never did anything quietly. Despite Torres's warnings to stay inside, Maggie couldn't sit still. By noon, she was pacing the house like a caged animal, her mind racing through everything she had learned. 5 years of murders. An empire built on blood and silence. Her daughter stumbling onto the truth and paying with her life. And now? Warren Blake in a cell waiting for his lawyers to find some loophole, some technicality, some way to slither free. Grandma? Maggie turned. Lily was standing in the doorway clutching her latest drawing. Yes, sweetheart. Are the bad people going to jail? Maggie knelt to Lily's level. Yes, the police arrested them this morning. All of them. The most important ones. Lily was quiet for a moment, processing this. Will they stay in jail forever? I hope so. The police have lots of evidence against them. Mama's evidence. Yes, your mama was very brave. She made sure the bad people couldn't hide what they did. Lily held out her drawing. I made this for her. Maggie took the paper. It showed a woman with dark hair surrounded by stars with a large dog sitting beside her. That's Mama in heaven, Lily explained. And that's Shadow keeping her company until we get there too. Maggie felt tears threatening. It's beautiful, Lily. Your mama would love it. Can we put it on her grave when she has one? Absolutely. We'll put it there together. The afternoon brought another round of developments. Torres arrived in person, her expression grave but determined. Blake's lawyers are already making noise, claiming illegal search and seizure police misconduct evidence tampering. Can they make any of it stick? Not with Christine cooperating, not with the mountain of evidence your daughter compiled. Torres sat down at the kitchen table. But I wanted to warn you, they're going to come after Hannah's character. What do you mean? I've already heard rumblings. They're going to claim she was unstable, that she had a vendetta against Blake, that the videos were edited or staged. That's absurd. Of course it is, but they'll try anyway, which means we need to establish Hannah's credibility beyond any doubt. How? By finding people who knew her, colleagues from her job at the environmental office, friends, anyone who can testify to her character. Torres hesitated. Did she have any close relationships here? Anyone she confided in? Maggie shook her head. I don't know. We hadn't spoken in 10 years. I don't know anything about her life here. Her apartment? We've processed it for evidence, but there are personal items, photos, letters, things that might help us understand who she was in these last months. Torres met Maggie's eyes. Would you be willing to go through them? With me, it might help the case, but I understand if it's too painful. Maggie thought of Hannah's video, of the words she had spoken into the camera, knowing they might be her last. I never stopped loving you. I always did. When can we go? Tomorrow morning, I'll drive you. That night, Maggie couldn't sleep. She lay in the darkness, listening to Lily's soft breathing in the next room, shadows occasional shifting the wind in the trees outside. She thought about the 10 years she had lost, all the birthdays she had missed, all the milestones she hadn't witnessed. Hannah graduating college, Hannah becoming a mother, Hannah growing into the woman she had always been meant to be. All of it stolen. First by Maggie's own pride and stubbornness, then by a man who thought he could kill anyone who got in his way. At 2 a.m, she got up and went to the window. the same window where Shadow had kept his vigil for 14 nights. The tree line was barely visible in the darkness, a black mass against a slightly less black sky. Hannah had been out there, buried in the mud, waiting to be found. And somehow, impossibly, Shadow had known. "How did you know, boy?" Maggie whispered. Shadow, who had followed her from the bedroom, pressed his nose against her hand. He didn't have answers. He only had loyalty instinct and a connection to something Maggie couldn't understand. But he had known, and because of him, Lily was safe. The evidence was found. Justice was coming. Hannah's death would not be in vain. The next morning, Torres picked Maggie up at 9. Lily stayed with Deputy Williams and Shadow, the three of them settling in for a day of cartoons and coloring. "I don't want you to go, Lily said as Maggie was leaving. "I'll be back in a few hours, I promise." "You promise? "I promise. The drive to Millbrook took 30 minutes. Hannah's apartment was on the second floor of a modest complex, the kind of place where young professionals lived while building their careers. Torres unlocked the door with a key from the evidence bag. Maggie stepped inside and felt her breath catch. It was like stepping into her daughter's mind. Books everywhere stacked on shelves, piled on tables, spilling out of boxes. Notes tacked to the walls. Maps with highlighted routes. Photographs, so many photographs, of Lily at various ages, of places Hannah had traveled, of Michael young and healthy smiling at the camera, and in one corner a single photograph of Maggie herself, taken years ago before the estrangement. Mother and daughter standing together, arms around each other, laughing at something off camera. Maggie picked up the photograph with trembling hands. "She kept it," she whispered. "All these years. She kept it." Torres gave her a moment, then gently said, "I need you to look at her workspace. Tell me if anything seems off or if you recognize any names." The desk was cluttered with papers, reports on watershed contamination, maps of Blake development properties, lists of names and dates. This isn't just about the hit and run, Maggie realized. She was investigating Blake's entire operation. We know, but this goes deeper than we thought. Torres pointed to a wall covered with pinned papers and connecting strings. She was mapping his network, everyone who was paid off, everyone who looked the other way. Maggie studied the wall. Garrett's name was there. Marsh's. A dozen others she didn't recognize, and at the center Warren Blake, with lines radiating out like a spider's web. How long had she been working on this, when based on the documents at least 6 months, maybe longer? She came back to Pine Ridge for this, not just for the job. She came back to take him down. It looks that way. Maggie felt something shift in her chest. Not grief this time. Pride. Hannah had spent the last months of her life working to expose a murderer, had known the danger, had done it anyway. Here. Torres handed her a journal. This was hidden in a drawer. It's personal. You should read it. Maggie opened the journal to a random page. Hannah's handwriting filled the margins. Day 47. More evidence today. Blake's company dumped toxic waste at the Morrison site 3 years ago. Paid off the inspector. 4 kids in the surrounding neighborhood have developed rare cancers since then. 4 kids. How does a person live with themselves? Day 52. I think someone's following me. Black SUV. Same license plate 3 days in a row. Might be paranoid. Might not be. Day 58. Mom's birthday today. I bought a card. Couldn't send it. Still angry. Still hurt. But I miss her. God, I miss her. Maggie had to stop reading. The words blurred through her tears. There's more, Torres said gently. Entries about Lily, about why she came back, about you. I can't. Not yet. Take it home. Read it when you're ready. Torres squeezed her shoulder. Your daughter was remarkable, Mrs. Sullivan. Whatever happened between you, she loved you. It's clear in every page. They spent 2 more hours in the apartment. Torres cataloged potential evidence while Maggie sorted through personal items. Lily's baby pictures, Hannah's college diploma, a box of letters she had written but never sent. One envelope caught Maggie's eye. It was addressed to her, dated 2 weeks ago. She opened it with shaking hands. Dear Mom, I've started this letter 100 times and never finished. I don't even know if I'll mail it this time, but I need to say these things even if they're just for me. I'm sorry for the things I said, for walking away, for 10 years of silence. I was young and stupid and convinced I knew better than everyone. You were just trying to protect me, and I threw it back in your face. I have a daughter now. Her name is Lily. She's 6 years old, and she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. And every day I understand a little more of what you went through, the fear, the desperate need to keep her safe from everything. I came back to Pine Ridge for a reason. I found something terrible and I can't look away. You taught me that. You taught me that some things are worth fighting for even when it's hard. Even when it's dangerous. If something happens to me, Lily will need you. I've told her about you, showed her pictures. She knows you're someone who can be trusted. I hope I get to mail this letter. I hope we get a second chance. But if we don't, please know that I never stopped loving you. That I regret every wasted day. That if I could do it over, I would never have left. Take care of my baby. Tell her about me. Tell her I tried to be brave. I love you, Mom. I always did. Hannah Maggie sat on the floor of her daughter's apartment, clutching the letter, sobbing like she hadn't sobbed since the day Michael died. Torres found her there 10 minutes later. She didn't say anything. Just sat down beside Maggie and waited until the worst of it had passed. She was going to reach out, Maggie finally managed. She was going to call me. We were going to have the second chance. She didn't get to mail the letter, but she told Lily, and Lily led you to her. In a way, you still got that second chance. Through her death? Through her daughter. Hannah made sure Lily knew where to go, who to trust. She gave you each other. Maggie wiped her eyes. It's not enough. No, it never is. Torres stood and offered her hand. But it's what we have, and I think Hannah would want us to make the most of it. The drive home was quiet. Maggie held Hannah's journal and the unsent letter in her lap, unable to put them down. When they arrived, Lily came running out the front door with Shadow at her heels. Grandma, you're back! Maggie caught her in a fierce hug. I'm back, sweetheart. I told you I would be. Did you find anything? I found some of your mama's things. Photos, letters, things that help us remember her. Can I see? Some of them, when you're ready. Maggie pulled back to look at Lily's face. Your mama loved you more than anything in the world. Everything she did to protect you. I know, Lily's voice was solemn. She told me before she left me at the cabin. She said she had to make sure the bad people couldn't hurt us. She said she was doing it for me. She was. She was doing it for all of us. That night after Lily was in bed, Maggie sat in the living room reading Hannah's journal by lamplight. Shadow lay at her feet, his presence a comfort in the darkness. The entries spanned 6 months. Hannah's growing certainty that Blake was dangerous, her frustration with the corruption in the county, her fear that she was being watched, her love for Lily, her complicated feelings about Maggie. Day 89. Lily asked about Grandma again today, showed her the photo. She wants to meet her, said Grandma looks nice. How do I explain 10 years of stupid pride? How do I explain that I was wrong and I was too scared to admit it? Day 94. Made my decision. Going to start hiding copies of the evidence. If something happens to me, I need someone to find it. Someone who won't give up. Someone who won't let Blake win. There's only one person I trust that much. Day 97. Took Lily to the cabin today. Showed her the hiding spot. Told her about Mom, about Shadow, about where to go if the worst happens. She's so young. Too young for this, but she's strong. Like her grandma. Like I wish I'd been. Maggie closed the journal. Hannah had trusted her. After everything. After 10 years of silence. When it really mattered, Hannah had trusted her mother above everyone else, and Maggie would honor that trust, would raise Lily with love and strength, would make sure Blake and Garrett and Marsh paid for what they had done, would make sure Hannah's sacrifice meant something. Outside, the wind stirred the trees. Somewhere in the darkness, the abandoned cabin sat empty, its secrets finally revealed. The creek bed where Hannah had been buried flowed with clean water, now washed free of blood and lies. And in a modest house on 3 acres of land, a grandmother sat with her granddaughter and a faithful dog beginning the long process of healing. The worst was over. The truth was out. Now came the hard part. Now came the justice. The trial began 6 weeks after the arrests. Maggie had spent those weeks preparing Lily for the questions she would eventually face, preparing herself for the ordeal of testifying against the men who had killed her daughter, preparing for the media circus that had descended on Pine Ridge like a plague of locusts. Cameras everywhere, reporters camped outside her house, requests for interviews that she declined, accusations from Blake's supporters that she was lying, that Hannah had been unstable, that the whole thing was a conspiracy to destroy a good man. Through it all, Lily remained her anchor. The girl had started having nightmares. Waking up screaming for her mother, clinging to Shadow like he was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting beneath her feet. But during the day, she was quiet, watchful, processing everything with an intelligence that sometimes frightened Maggie. Grandma, Lily asked one morning a week before the trial, will I have to talk to the judge? Maybe, sweetheart. The lawyers want to hear what your mama told you. Will the bad man be there, the one who hurt Mama? Yes, but you won't have to look at him, and I'll be right there the whole time. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that broke Maggie's heart all over again. I'm not scared. Mama said being brave means doing the right thing even when you're scared. But I'm not scared. I'm angry. Angry. He took my mama away. He doesn't get to scare me too. Maggie pulled Lily into her arms. Your mama would be so proud of you. She's watching, isn't she? From heaven. Every single minute. The first day of Warren Blake's trial drew crowds that spilled out of the courthouse and onto the street. Maggie arrived early, with Torres slipping through a back entrance to avoid the media. Lily stayed home with Deputy Williams in shadow. The prosecutor had decided not to call her as a witness unless absolutely necessary. A small mercy. The courtroom was packed. Blake sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, his face a careful mask of wronged innocence. His legal team 5 attorneys, who probably cost more per hour than most people earned in a week, shuffled papers with practiced confidence. But something was different about Blake today. Something in his eyes when he glanced around the courtroom. Fear, Maggie realized. For the first time since his arrest, Warren Blake looked afraid. Good. The prosecutor, a woman named Sarah Chen, who had been brought in from Helena specifically for this case, delivered her opening statement with surgical precision. The evidence will show that Warren Blake is not the respected businessman he pretends to be. He is a murderer, a manipulator, a man who built his fortune on the bodies of anyone who dared to stand in his way. She walked the jury through the timeline. Daniel Reyes and his environmental report, the hit and run that wasn't an accident, Hannah Sullivan, who had witnessed the murder and paid for it with her life. You will see video evidence of Warren Blake striking Daniel Reyes with his vehicle. You will see him return to the body. You will see him make a phone call, and you will see Sheriff Thomas Garrett arrive to help him dispose of the evidence. Blake's lead attorney objected. Inflammatory language, Your Honor. Overruled. Continue, Ms. Chen. You will hear testimony from Christine Blake, the defendant's own wife, who will confirm that her husband borrowed her vehicle that night and returned with unexplained damage. You will hear from Deputy Rachel Torres, who investigated despite pressure from her corrupt superiors. And you will hear from Margaret Sullivan, the mother of Hannah Sullivan, who found the evidence her daughter hid before she was killed. Chen paused, letting her words settle over the courtroom. Hannah Sullivan was not a criminal. She was not unstable. She was a young mother who witnessed a murder and refused to stay silent. The defendant and his co-conspirators tracked her down, ran her off the road, and buried her body in a creek bed like garbage. Objection. Sustained. Ms. Chen, please moderate your language. I apologize, Your Honor. Chen turned back to the jury. By the end of this trial, you will have no doubt about Warren Blake's guilt. The only question will be whether you have the courage to hold him accountable. The defense attorney rose for his opening statement. His name was Richard Hartley, and he had a reputation for getting wealthy clients acquitted, regardless of the evidence against them. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what you're about to hear is a tragedy. 2 people are dead. A child has lost her mother. These are terrible things, and we don't dispute that they happened. He walked slowly in front of the jury box. What we dispute is who is responsible. The prosecution wants you to believe that Warren Blake, a man who has contributed millions of dollars to this community, a man who has created thousands of jobs, a man who has supported charities and schools and hospitals, suddenly decided to commit murder. Does that make sense to you? Maggie felt her jaw tighten. The truth is far more complicated. Sheriff Garrett and Deputy Marsh had their own reasons for wanting Daniel Reyes dead. The environmental report threatened projects that would have generated significant revenue for county coffers. Revenue that certain officials depended on. What exactly are you implying, Mr. Hartley? Chen interrupted. I'm implying that my client is being framed by the very people who committed these crimes. The video evidence you'll see was recorded by a woman who had a documented grudge against Blake Development. A woman who had been trying for months to find anything to bring down my client. That's not true, Maggie said, unable to contain herself. The judge's gavel cracked. Mrs. Sullivan, you will remain silent or be removed from this courtroom. Maggie forced herself to sit back. Torres put a steadying hand on her arm. The evidence will show, Hartley continued smoothly, that Hannah Sullivan was not an innocent bystander. She was an activist who came to Pine Ridge specifically to target Warren Blake. Whatever happened to her is a tragedy, but my client is not responsible. The first week of testimony established the timeline. Forensic experts testified about the physical evidence. The damage to Christine Blake's SUV. The tire tracks at Millbrook Bend. The wounds on Daniel Reyes's body that matched the impact patterns of a vehicle traveling at high speed. Torres took the stand on Thursday. Deputy Torres, can you describe how you became involved in this investigation? I received an anonymous tip 3 days after the hit and run. Someone claimed to have video evidence proving it wasn't an accident. Did you follow up on this tip? I tried, but Sheriff Garrett told me the case was closed. He said it was a drunk driver who was never found. He ordered me to drop it. Did you? No, I began investigating on my own, quietly, off the books. Hartley's cross-examination was brutal. Deputy Torres, you've been with the Pine Ridge Sheriff's Department for how long? 6 years. And in that time, how many times have you been passed over for promotion? Objection, relevance. I'm establishing the witness's potential bias against her superiors, Your Honor. Overruled. You may answer. Torres kept her composure. 3 times. 3 times. And you believe that Sheriff Garrett was responsible for blocking your advancement. I believe I was passed over because I wouldn't look the other way when I saw corruption. Or perhaps you have a personal vendetta against the sheriff and are using this case to destroy him. I have evidence. The vendetta exists only in your imagination. A murmur went through the courtroom. Hartley's eyes narrowed. No further questions. The video evidence was played on Monday of the second week. Maggie had seen it before, but watching it on the large screen in the courtroom made it somehow worse. More real, the headlights approaching, the SUV swerving, the impact that had ended Daniel Reyes's life. Several jurors looked away. One woman covered her mouth, but it was the second video that caused the biggest reaction. Blake and Garrett loading the body, the timestamp, the unmistakable faces caught in the dashcam's glow. The prosecution requests that the video be paused at this frame, Chen said. Can you identify the 2 individuals shown? The forensic video analyst nodded. The man on the left is Sheriff Thomas Garrett. The man on the right is Warren Blake. Facial recognition software confirms both identifications with 99.7% certainty. Blake's face remained impassive, but Maggie saw his hands clench under the table. He knew it was over, but Hartley wasn't finished fighting. Can video be manipulated? He asked during cross-examination. Theoretically, yes, but there's no evidence of tampering in these files. No evidence that you found. But isn't it possible that a skilled technician could alter video in ways that aren't immediately detectable? It's extremely difficult with modern forensic tools, but not impossible. Nothing is impossible, Mr. Hartley, but the metadata, the file structure, the chain of custody all indicate these videos are authentic. Your opinion is noted. Christine Blake took the stand on Wednesday. She looked diminished, smaller than she had appeared in news photos. Her hands shook as she raised them to take the oath. Mrs. Blake, on the night of September 15th, did your husband borrow your vehicle? Yes, he said he had a meeting and his car was in the shop. What time did he return? Around 2 in the morning. I was still awake because I was worried. Did you notice anything unusual about the vehicle when he returned? The next day, I noticed the side mirror was broken and there were scratches on the front bumper. Warren said he hit a deer. Did you believe him? Christine's eyes filled with tears. I wanted to believe him. I always wanted to believe him. But you didn't. No, not really. Not after I saw the news about the man who was killed in a hit and run the same night. She looked directly at the jury. I knew, deep down I knew, but I was afraid. Afraid of what? Of Warren, of what he might do if I asked too many questions, of what would happen to our children. She wiped her eyes. I'm not proud of my silence, but I'm telling the truth now. Hartley's cross-examination was surprisingly gentle. Perhaps he knew that attacking a crying woman would only alienate the jury. Mrs. Blake, is it possible your husband really did hit a deer that night? Is it possible, I suppose, but I don't believe it. You don't believe it, or you don't want to believe it because you're angry at your husband for being arrested. I don't believe it because I know my husband. I know what he's capable of. And what is he capable of, in your opinion? Christine looked at Blake for the first time since taking the stand. Her voice was steady when she answered. Anything. He's capable of anything if it protects his interests. The courtroom was silent. Maggie was called to testify on Friday. She had prepared for this moment, had rehearsed her answers with Chen until she could recite them in her sleep, but nothing could prepare her for the reality of sitting in the witness box looking at the man who had killed her daughter. Mrs. Sullivan, can you describe how you discovered your granddaughter on the night of September 18th? Maggie told the story. Shadow's vigil, the storm, the cabin. Lily hiding in the crawlspace with Hannah's photograph and letter? And what did your granddaughter tell you about why she was there? She said her mother had brought her to the cabin 3 nights earlier, that Hannah was crying, saying they had to go somewhere safe, that Hannah told her to wait for the dog, that Grandma Maggie would help her. Did Lily tell you anything else about what her mother had said? She said Hannah had proof of something terrible, that an important man had done a very bad thing, and Hannah had filmed it on her phone. Chen introduced Hannah's letter into evidence. Maggie read it aloud, her voice breaking on the final words. Take care of my baby. Tell her about me. Tell her I tried to be brave. I love you, Mom. I always did. Several jurors were crying. Even the judge looked moved. Hartley approached for cross-examination with the careful tread of a man walking through a minefield. Mrs. Sullivan, you testified that you hadn't spoken to your daughter in 10 years. Is that correct? Yes. So you have no personal knowledge of her life during that decade. That's correct. No knowledge of her mental state, her relationships, her motivations for returning to Pine Ridge. I know she came back to investigate Warren Blake. Her journal makes that clear. Ah, yes, the journal, a document that only you have access to, that only you can verify is genuine. It's in Hannah's handwriting. Experts have confirmed it. Experts you hired. Experts the prosecution hired. Independent experts. Hartley changed tactics. Mrs. Sullivan, isn't it true that you feel guilty about your estrangement from your daughter? Of course I do. And isn't it possible that your guilt is influencing your perception of events that you want to believe? Your daughter died a hero because the alternative that she died, as a result of her own reckless actions, is too painful to accept. Maggie felt her anger rising. My daughter was murdered. I saw her body pulled from a creek bed. I saw the wounds on her head where she was struck by a vehicle. There's nothing reckless about witnessing a crime and trying to report it. Except that she didn't report it, did she? She didn't go to the police. She hid evidence and played amateur detective until it got her killed. She couldn't go to the police because the police were corrupt. Your client made sure of that. That's speculation. It's fact. Sheriff Garrett helped your client dispose of a body. Deputy Marsh followed my daughter for days before she was killed. The police were the enemy, not the solution. And yet here we are, in a courtroom, seeking justice from the very system you claim was corrupted. Because Deputy Torres wasn't corrupt, because Detective Sandoval wasn't corrupt, because some people still believe in doing the right thing. Maggie leaned forward. My daughter believed in that. She died for it, and nothing you say will change what your client did. No further questions. The prosecution rested on Monday of the 3rd week. Hartley called character witnesses, business associates who praised Blake's generosity, employees who described him as fair and kind, charity directors who credited him with saving their programs. None of it mattered. The videos were too clear. Christine's testimony too damning. The physical evidence too overwhelming. Closing arguments came on Thursday. Chen was methodical, walking the jury through every piece of evidence, every witness's testimony, every link in the chain that connected Warren Blake to 2 murders. Hannah Sullivan did not have to die, she concluded. She witnessed a crime and tried to do the right thing. For that, she was hunted down and killed. Her daughter was left an orphan. Her mother was left to grieve. She turned to face Blake directly. Warren Blake thought he was untouchable. He thought his money and his power and his corrupt friends would protect him forever. He was wrong. Back to the jury. You have seen the evidence. You have heard the testimony. You know what happened on those dark roads in September. Now it's your turn to do the right thing. Find Warren Blake guilty. Give Hannah Sullivan the justice she deserved. Hartley's closing was passionate but desperate. He attacked the chain of evidence, questioned the motives of witnesses, suggested that Garrett and Marsh had acted alone, that Blake was an innocent man caught up in their crimes. No one believed him. Maggie could see it in the jurors' faces. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. 4 hours that felt like 4 years. Maggie sat in the courtroom with Torres, unable to eat, unable to think about anything except what was happening behind that closed door. At 6:15, the jury announced they had reached a verdict. The courtroom filled rapidly. Blake was led back in his face gray. His attorneys whispered urgently to him, but he seemed beyond hearing. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Daniel Reyes, how do you find, we find the defendant guilty? A gasp went through the courtroom. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Hannah Sullivan, how do you find, we find the defendant guilty? On the charge of conspiracy to obstruct justice, guilty. On the charge of tampering with evidence, guilty. On the charge of witness intimidation, guilty. Each word was a hammer blow. Blake seemed to shrink with every verdict, the arrogance draining out of him, until he was just a small, frightened man in an expensive suit. Maggie felt Torres grip her arm, felt tears streaming down her own face, felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. It was over. Blake would spend the rest of his life in prison. Garrett had already pleaded guilty and was awaiting sentencing. Marsh had cooperated with prosecutors and would serve 15 years. The men who had killed her daughter would pay for what they had done. Court is adjourned. Sentencing will take place in 3 weeks. Blake was led away in handcuffs. He didn't look at Maggie as he passed. Couldn't look at her. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Questions shouted from every direction. Mrs. Sullivan, how do you feel about the verdict? Will you be making a statement? What do you want to say to Warren Blake? Maggie stopped, turned to face the cameras. The questions fell silent. My daughter was a hero, she said. She saw evil and she refused to look away. She gave her life trying to protect others from the same fate. I am proud to be her mother. She paused. To Warren Blake, you thought you could destroy my family. You were wrong. Hannah's truth outlived your lies, and her daughter, my granddaughter, will grow up knowing exactly who her mother was. She turned and walked to Torres's car without looking back. When she got home, Lily was waiting on the front porch with Shadow. Did they get him? Grandma, did they put the bad man in jail? Yes, sweetheart, they got him. Lily threw her arms around Maggie's waist. Mama knows, doesn't she? She's watching from heaven and she knows. She knows, and she's so proud of you. I'm proud of her too. Lily looked up with eyes that were far too old for 6 years. She was the bravest person ever. Yes, she was. They went inside together, Shadow following close behind. The house was quiet, peaceful. For the first time in months, the weight on Maggie's chest felt a little lighter. Justice had been served. Now came the healing. 3 months after the verdict, Maggie stood in a courtroom for the last time. Warren Blake looked nothing like the arrogant businessman who had been arrested in his silk pajamas. Prison had hollowed him out. His expensive suit hung loose on his frame. His eyes, once cold and calculating, were empty. Mr. Blake, you have been found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy to obstruct justice, evidence tampering, and witness intimidation. The judge's voice was iron. Before I pronounce sentence, is there anything you wish to say? Blake's attorney whispered urgently in his ear. Blake shook his head. Very well. For the murder of Daniel Reyes, I sentence you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. For the murder of Hannah Sullivan, I sentence you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. These sentences will run consecutively. Maggie heard someone crying behind her. Christine Blake, surrounded by her children, watching her husband receive his fate. You built an empire on blood and silence, the judge continued. You corrupted public officials. You destroyed anyone who threatened your interests. And when a young mother witnessed your crime and tried to do the right thing, you hunted her down like an animal. Blake flinched. Hannah Sullivan deserved better. Daniel Reyes deserved better. This community deserved better. May God have mercy on your soul, because this court has none. The gavel came down. Blake was led away in chains. He still didn't look at Maggie. Couldn't look at her. Outside the courthouse, Torres was waiting. It's done, Maggie said. How do you feel? Empty. I thought I'd feel satisfied, vindicated, something, but I just feel empty. That's normal. Justice doesn't bring them back. It just makes sure the people responsible can't hurt anyone else. Maggie nodded slowly. I need to go home. Lily's waiting. I'll drive you. The ride was quiet. Maggie watched the familiar streets of Pine Ridge pass by this town that had taken so much from her and given her something precious in return. Rachel, honey, she said as they turned onto her road. Thank you for everything, for believing Hannah when no one else would, for protecting us, for not giving up. Torres glanced at her. Hannah reached out to me. She trusted me. I couldn't let her down. You didn't? You gave her justice. We gave her justice, all of us together. Lily was on the front porch when they arrived, Shadow beside her, tail wagging. The girl had grown in 3 months, lost some of the haunted look in her eyes, smiled more often now. Though the smiles were still fragile, still touched with sadness. Grandma, she ran to meet Maggie at the car. Is it really over? It's really over, sweetheart. The bad man is going to prison forever. Forever, forever. Forever, forever. Lily processed this. Good. He deserves it. Yes, he does. They went inside together, Shadow padding along behind them, ever watchful, ever present. The house smelled like cookies. Mrs. Patterson, the social worker who had become an unlikely ally, had been baking with Lily while Maggie was at the sentencing. The adoption paperwork came through, Mrs. Patterson said, handing Maggie an envelope. It's official. Lily is legally your daughter now. Maggie's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. The document inside was simple, bureaucratic, just words on paper. But it meant everything. Lily, come here. The girl approached, curious. This paper says that you're officially mine now. Not just my granddaughter. My daughter, forever. Lily's eyes widened. Really? Really? So I'm Lily Sullivan now. Lily Brooks Sullivan, if you want to keep both names. I do. I want to keep Mama's name and have yours too. Lily threw her arms around Maggie's waist. I love you, Grandma. Mom. She pulled back, confused. What do I call you now? Maggie smiled through her tears. Whatever feels right, sweetheart. Grandma, Mom, whatever you want. Can I call you Grandma, Mom? You can call me anything you like. Grandma, Mom. Lily tested the words. I like it. It's special, like us. The weeks that followed brought a new rhythm to their lives. Lily started second grade at Pine Ridge Elementary. She was nervous the first day, clinging to Maggie's hand at the school entrance, reluctant to let go. What if the other kids don't like me? They'll love you. You're smart and kind and funny. What if they ask about my mom? Maggie knelt to Lily's level. If they ask you, tell them your mom was a hero. She fought bad guys and saved people, and now she's watching over you from heaven. Like a superhero. Exactly like a superhero. Lily considered this, then squared her small shoulders. Okay, I can do this. I know you can. I'll be right here when school ends. Promise? Promise? Promise. Lily hugged her fiercely, then marched through the school doors without looking back. Maggie watched until she disappeared, then stood there for another 5 minutes, unable to move. First day is always hard. She turned. Elena Reyes was standing behind her, a sad smile on her face. Mrs. Reyes, I didn't know you had children at this school. I don't. I was just driving by and saw you. Elena moved to stand beside her. I wanted to thank you for what you did, for making sure Daniel's death wasn't forgotten. Hannah did that, not me. Hannah started it. You finished it. Elena touched Maggie's arm. I know we've both lost so much, but I wanted you to know that you're not alone. If you ever need to talk to someone who understands, I'd like that. They exchanged numbers. Two women bound by tragedy finding connection in their shared grief. The foundation came together over the following months. Elena had approached Maggie with the idea shortly after Blake's sentencing. A foundation in Daniel's and Hannah's names. Environmental protection. Support for witnesses who faced intimidation. Scholarships for students pursuing justice. I can't bring Daniel back, Elena said during their first planning meeting. But I can make sure his work continues, that his death meant something. Hannah would have loved this, Maggie replied. She was always fighting for something, always trying to make things better. Then let's honor that. Let's make sure their legacy is one of change, not just tragedy. The Reyes Sullivan Foundation launched 6 months after the trial. Torres spoke at the ceremony. So did Detective Sandoval. So did Christine Blake, who had become an unlikely advocate for accountability in corporate leadership. Maggie stood at the podium looking out at the crowd that had gathered. Friends, neighbors, strangers who had followed the case, and in the front row, Lily holding a photograph of Hannah. My daughter came back to Pine Ridge because she believed the truth mattered, Maggie said. She believed that one person could make a difference, that standing up for what's right is worth any cost. She paused, steadying her voice. She was wrong about one thing. It wasn't one person, it was all of us. Rachel Torres, who investigated when everyone told her to look away. Detective Sandoval, who brought state resources to bear on corruption. Christine Blake, who found the courage to testify against her own husband. And Lily, who was brave enough to wait in the darkness for help to come. She looked at her granddaughter. Hannah's last words to me were about love, about regret, about second chances. She didn't get her second chance. But because of her sacrifice, others will. The people Blake would have hurt. The witnesses he would have silenced. The truth he would have buried. Maggie straightened. This foundation exists to continue what Hannah started, to protect the environment she cared about, to support the people who speak up against powerful interests, to make sure that courage is never punished and truth is never silenced. She stepped back from the podium. "Thank you, and thank you, Hannah. We'll make you proud." The applause washed over her, but she barely heard it. All she could see was Lily's face shining with pride. A year passed. Then 2. The nightmares gradually faded. Lily stopped waking up screaming for her mother, started sleeping through the night, started laughing more that pure childhood laughter that had been absent for so long. Shadow grew older, his muzzle completely white now, his movement slower. But his devotion never wavered. He still slept at the foot of Lily's bed every night, still walked her to the school bus every morning, still watched over her with those intelligent eyes that seemed to see everything. "Grandma, Mom?" Lily asked one evening about 18 months after the trial. "Do you think Shadow knew about Mama about me being in the cabin?" Maggie considered the question. She had wondered the same thing many times. "I think Shadow sensed something. He always knew when something was wrong. When your Grandpa Michael was getting sick, Shadow knew before the doctors did." "But how?" "I don't know, sweetheart. Some things can't be explained. Maybe he could smell you from far away. Maybe he heard something we couldn't hear. Or maybe..." She paused. "Maybe he just knew because he loved us. And love finds a way." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think Mama sent him." "What do you mean?" "I think when Mama knew she couldn't come back, she asked God to help Shadow find me, like a message from heaven." Maggie felt tears threatening. "That's a beautiful thought. It makes me feel better, like Mama is still taking care of me even though she's not here." "She is, sweetheart. She always will be." The 2nd anniversary of Hannah's death fell on a crisp September day. Maggie and Lily drove to the cemetery where Hannah had been laid to rest next to Michael. They brought flowers, Lily's Hannah's favorite, and a drawing Lily had made. "I drew our family," Lily explained, kneeling by the gravestone. "You and me and Shadow, and up in the corner that's you and Grandpa Michael. You're watching over us." She placed the drawing carefully against the stone. "I'm 8 now, Mama. I'm in 3rd grade. I got all A's on my last report card. Grandma Mom says you'd be proud." Maggie stood back, giving Lily space for this private conversation. "I still miss you every day, but it doesn't hurt as much anymore. Grandma Mom says that's okay, that missing someone and being happy can happen at the same time." Lily traced the letters of Hannah's name with her finger. "I'm going to be brave like you when I grow up. I'm going to help people and stand up for what's right. I'm going to make sure everyone knows that my mama was a hero." She stood and returned to Maggie's side. "Can we come back next year?" "We can come back whenever you want." "I want to come every year, forever. So Mama knows we haven't forgotten." "We'll never forget, Lily. Never." That evening they had dinner at the kitchen table. Just the 2 of them and Shadow, who lay at their feet hoping for scraps. "Grandma, Mom, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you think Mama knew she was going to die?" Maggie set down her fork. "Why do you ask?" "Because of the way she said goodbye. The way she told me all those things about you and Shadow. It felt like..." Lily struggled for words. "It felt like she was saying goodbye forever, not just for a few days." "I think your Mama knew she was in danger. I think she prepared for the worst because she wanted to make sure you would be safe no matter what happened. But she still did it anyway, tried to stop the bad man, even though she knew it was dangerous." "Yes, she did?" Why didn't she just run away, take me somewhere safe and never come back?" Maggie reached across the table and took Lily's hand. "Because your Mama couldn't live with herself if she let a murderer go free. She knew that if Blake wasn't stopped, he would hurt more people, kill more people, and she couldn't look away from that. It wasn't in her nature." "Like it's not in your nature." "What do you mean, Tauk? You didn't give up either. When you found me, when you found out what happened, you could have just taken me and run away. But you stayed. You fought. You made sure the bad guys went to prison." Maggie smiled sadly. "Your Mama and I were more alike than either of us wanted to admit. That's why we fought so much when she was young. We were both stubborn, both determined, both convinced we knew best. But you loved each other. More than anything. Even when we were angry. Even when we weren't speaking. The love was always there." Lily nodded slowly. "I think I understand now. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you're scared. Because some things are more important than being safe." "Who told you that?" "You did, and Mama did. You both told me the same thing, just with different words." 3 years after the trial, Torres called with unexpected news. "Warren Blake died last night. Heart attack in his cell." Maggie felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, just emptiness. I thought you should know before it hits the news. Thank you. How do you feel? I don't know. I thought I'd feel something. Happy that he's gone, angry that he escaped the full weight of his sentence, something. And I just feel tired. Tired of thinking about him. Tired of having him take up space in my head. Then stop. Let him go. He can't hurt anyone anymore. That's what matters. Maggie nodded, though Torres couldn't see her. You're right. It's over. It's finally completely over. She didn't tell Lily about Blake's death. The girl had moved on, built a new life, found happiness. She didn't need to know that the monster who had killed her mother had finally died. Some things were better left unsaid. 5 years after the trial, the town of Pine Ridge dedicated a memorial at Millbrook Bend, a simple stone marker where the creek met the road. 2 names engraved, Daniel Reyes, Hannah Sullivan, and below them the words, "They stood for truth." Lily, now 11, read a poem she had written for the occasion. My mother was a hero. She wasn't scared to fight. She saw the darkness in the world and chose to be the light. She gave her life for justice. She gave her life for truth. She gave me to my grandma, and she gave me my youth. I'll always miss her laughter. I'll always miss her voice. But I know she'd be proud of me for making the same choice, to stand up for what's right, to never look away, to be brave like my mother. Every single day, the crowd applauded. Lily returned to Maggie's side, suddenly shy. Was that okay? That was perfect, sweetheart, absolutely perfect. Elena Reyes approached them after the ceremony. She looked different now, lighter, as if the years had finally allowed her to set down some of the weight she had been carrying. That was beautiful, Lily. Your mother would have loved it. Thank you, Mrs. Reyes. Please call me Elena. After all this time, I think we're family. And they were. The Reyes-Sullivan Foundation had grown into something remarkable. Environmental protection programs across Montana, a network of safe houses for witnesses facing intimidation, scholarships that had sent dozens of students to college. Hannah's legacy living on. Shadow died peacefully in his sleep on a spring morning when Lily was 12. She found him when she woke for school, curled up in his favorite spot by her bed. He looked like he was dreaming, his old legs twitching slightly as if he was running through fields in his sleep, but he wasn't breathing. Grandma, Mom? Lily's scream brought Maggie running. They sat together on the floor, holding Shadow's still warm body, crying for the dog who had saved them both. He was the best dog, Lily sobbed. The best dog in the whole world. He was sweetheart. He found you when no one else could. He protected you. He loved you. Do you think he's with Mama now? I think if anyone could find your Mama in heaven, it would be Shadow. He was very good at finding people who needed to be found. Shh! They buried him under the old oak tree in the backyard. The same tree where Hannah had hidden her evidence years ago. It felt right, full circle. Lily painted a stone with his name. Shadowbrook Sullivan, best dog ever. 14 nights, Lily said as they stood over the grave. You told me he stared at the cabin for 14 nights before you finally followed him. That's right. He knew I was there. He knew the whole time. He just had to wait for you to listen. I should have listened sooner. You listened when it mattered. That's what counts. Maggie pulled Lily close. When did you get so wise? I learned from you and from Mama and from Shadow. 10 years after the trial, Lily graduated from high school as valedictorian. Maggie sat in the audience, tears streaming down her face, watching the young woman her granddaughter had become. Tall, strong, beautiful, with Hannah's determination and Michael's gentle spirit and something entirely her own. I want to talk about heroes, Lily said from the podium. Not the kind in movies with capes and superpowers. Real heroes. The kind who walk among us every day. She looked directly at Maggie. My grandmother is a hero. She spent 20 years saving soldiers' lives in war zones. When she retired, she thought her days of saving people were over. She was wrong. The audience was silent, captivated. 10 years ago, my grandmother's dog led her through a thunderstorm to an abandoned cabin where a scared little girl was hiding. That little girl was me. My mother had put me there because she knew if anyone could protect me, it was her own mother, even though they hadn't spoken in 10 years, even though there was anger and hurt between them. When it mattered most, my mother trusted my grandmother with my life. Lily paused, composing herself. My mother was a hero, too. She witnessed a murder and refused to stay silent. She gathered evidence against powerful men who thought they were untouchable. She gave her life trying to bring them to justice. Her voice strengthened. I used to wonder why she did it. Why she didn't just run away, take me somewhere safe, forget what she had seen. Now I understand. Some people can't look away from injustice. Some people have to fight even when it costs them everything. My mother was one of those people. My grandmother is one of those people. Lily straightened. And I'm going to be one of those people too. I'm going to law school. I'm going to become a prosecutor. I'm going to spend my life making sure that the powerful can't prey on the weak, making sure that truth always wins. She smiled at Maggie. My mother once wrote that standing up for what's right isn't about being brave. It's about not being able to live with yourself if you don't. She was right, and I promise right here in front of all of you that I will never look away. I will never stay silent. I will honor my mother's memory by living the values she died for. The applause was thunderous. That night after the ceremony, Maggie and Lily sat on the back porch together. The same porch where Shadow used to keep his vigil. The same view of the tree line now peaceful and familiar. Your mother would be so proud of you, Maggie said. I hope so. I know so. You've become everything she wanted you to be, everything she believed you could be. Lily leaned her head on Maggie's shoulder. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. You're strong enough to do anything. Maybe, but I didn't have to, because you were there. You've always been there. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars emerged. Grandma, Mom, Lily said finally, do you remember what I asked you the night you found me in the cabin? You asked if I was Grandma Maggie. After that, when you brought me home. Maggie thought back. That terrible, wonderful night. The storm, the discovery, the beginning of everything. You asked if your mama was coming back. And you said you didn't know, but we would find out. Lily turned to look at her. We found out. It wasn't the answer we wanted, but we found the truth. We found justice. We found each other. Yes, we did. That's what matters, isn't it? Not the answer we want, the truth we find. Maggie took Lily's hand. The hand that had once been so small, clutching a lunchbox in a dark crawl space, now grown strong, capable. That's exactly what matters. Above them, the stars burned bright. Somewhere among them, Maggie liked to believe Hannah was watching, seeing what her daughter had become, seeing the legacy she had left behind, a foundation that had helped thousands, a town transformed by truth, a daughter who would spend her life fighting for justice, and a granddaughter raised with love, ready to change the world. The road had been long. The cost had been terrible. But they had survived. They had healed. They had built something beautiful from the wreckage of tragedy, and they had done it together. Maggie stood slowly pulling Lily up with her. Come on, it's getting cold. Let's go inside. One more minute. I want to see if I can find Mama's star. Lily pointed at the brightest star above the tree line, the same star she had been pointing at since she was 6 years old. There she is. She's still watching. She always will be, sweetheart. She always will be. They went inside together, grandmother and granddaughter, mother and daughter, leaving the stars to burn in the darkness, leaving the past to rest in peace. Hannah Sullivan had died trying to do the right thing, but her death had not been in vain. Her truth had outlived the lies. Her love had outlived the hate. Her courage had inspired a generation. And in a modest house on 3 acres of land, 2 women who had found each other in the darkness continued to live in the light. Some stories end with tragedy. This one ended with hope. Some families are broken by loss. This one was forged by it. And some dogs faithful and true find the people who need to be found even when no one else can. Shadow had been one of those dogs, the best dog, the bravest dog, the dog who had started everything by staring at an old cabin every night for 14 nights, the dog who had led his owner through a storm to save a child, the dog who had given 2 broken people the chance to become a family. That was his legacy, that was his gift, and it would last forever.